Well, I guess we can get underway then. So I'm sure more people will start filing in over time, but we can get things started so that we wrap up on time as well. This is a joint webinar between Wakeo and the IDA Foundation about how Wakeo has helped the IDA Foundation to start managing its supply chain by exception. Thank you for everyone who's attended, and in particular, thank you to Charles and Bart for agreeing to speak with us and taking the time to be here.
Mm-hmm.
For anyone in attendance, just to do a little bit of admin, I suppose, before we get started, if you have any questions over the course of the webinar, you can use the chat on the right-hand side just to put them there. We won't address them during the course of the webinar itself, but there is a 10-minute section at the end for a Q&A. So anything that you ask, I'll take note of it, and then we will make sure that they ask it when we get to the end. There is also a poll there, and if you are a little bit shy about asking your question, you can actually sort of DM someone. So you can DM me by just clicking on my name and sending me a private message. So if you prefer not to have your message out in public, you can do that as well. But on that note, let's get things started, and I will hand over to Charles, Joannon, and Bart Van Rooijen. I've probably butchered both of your names, but if the two of you, Charles, if you could tell us a little bit more about what you do at Wakeo. And
yeah, thank you for the introduction, Edward, and thank you, Bart, for hosting this webinar with myself. So as you mentioned, so my name is Charles Joannon. I'm product manager at Wakeo, and I've been at Wakeo now for more than 2 years. And prior to that, I was a consultant in the transport industry, both in the passenger and the freight transportation. And my job at Wakeo as a product manager basically is to offer the best possible solution to our customers, and a solution that really responds to their need and has the most added value for them. And to do so, I'm always ensuring that we have that our product right now is the right one, and that we have always new features coming in order to bring even more visibility to our customers. And I'll hand over to you, Bart, to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Charles, and thanks for having me. My name is Bart Van Rooijen. Kudos, Edward, for pronouncing my name. It was not a bad effort at all. I'm the Supply Chain Sourcing and Solution Manager at IDA Foundation. I've been working at IDA since September 2016. A background of over 15 years of experience in different supply chain positions. And within IDA, since the day I started, I've been involved in a number of different roles within supply chain, mostly directed towards international transport and supply chain solutions. And as such, I've been in contact with Wakeo since I think it was early 2019. So a little bit of background on IDA Foundation, who we are and what we do. So at the core, we are a not-for-profit founded almost 50 years ago by a number of pharmacy students in Amsterdam in the Netherlands. And our mission from the beginning was and still is to be able to provide good quality medicines and medical equipment at affordable prices to lower and middle income countries. So originally, our clients were mostly in destination countries, mostly smaller central medical stores and local hospitals. And through the years, that has evolved into a client base that is mostly NGOs and healthcare and charitable organizations, while still maintaining some of the older customers, of course. Some of the services that we offer, stock keeping. So from the start, we've always been a wholesale company. So we buy in bulk and we sell in smaller MOQs to our clients. And then a number of years ago, through our experience in procuring medicines and medical equipment from our suppliers in mostly India and China, and our experience with our destination countries. We managed to develop our procurement services department, which works exclusively for larger donors who are really targeting specific diseases such as malaria, tuberculosis, HIV/AIDS. Of course, supply chain management is an integral part of what we do, looking at our supply chain, but even more so at the core is really our quality assurance and control. Working with medicines and medical equipment, yeah, it's a given. Quality is absolute key. And I'm proud to say that IDA Foundation in the market is really known as an organization that can provide high quality medical goods to all the destinations basically in the world.
Yeah, and thank you, Bart. And for a quick introduction of Wakeo, we are a SaaS platform that brings visibility on overseas shipments and on multimodal shipments, which means that we bring visibility on sea, air, and road freight. And today at Wakeo, we are working with two kinds of customers. First, we work directly with shippers such as IDA Foundation, but also in the retail industry with Uniqlo, for example, or Forestia in the automotive, or Bibron in the medical industry. And secondly, we also work directly with freight forwarder, like Clasquin in France, who wants to bring more visibility internally and also for their end customers. And what we offer is three major features, let's say. First, we propose real-time visibility on all modes of transport. Then with that, we have an alerting module in order to advise users as soon as we detect deviation on their shipments. And finally, we also propose an advanced analytics module where we show all the trends based on the historical data of the customers.
Yeah. So a little bit of background into IDA Foundation's supply chain with a number of key figures. So we have warehouse locations currently in Tilburg in the Netherlands, where we have our main distribution hub, and in Dubai, which is the basis for our kitting operations. And also, of course, in the last year, we had the COVID pandemic that hit us. And besides providing us with some severe operational issues, which we will get into later, it also provided us with an opportunity to really fulfill our mission. And we could use our Dubai operations to provide COVID response items to our existing clients and some new clients. All in all, in those warehouse locations, we have roughly 500 products out of a product portfolio of 3,000 items. That is in no way a fixed product catalog, of course. We're constantly evaluating if we need to add to that product catalog to see, basically to help the countries in need. So besides shipping from our warehouse, we have a large number of direct shipments as well. I think in terms of volumes for air freight, we ship mostly from our warehouse locations, but for sea freight, most of it is direct shipments. And all combined, that means that we ship to over 130 countries, mostly in the African continent. I think 60 to 70% of our shipments have an African country as an end destination, but also more and more to Middle Eastern countries such as Syria and Yemen, and also Southeast Asia and Latin America. So I mentioned COVID already, which is probably something that you hear in every single webinar, COVID, but anyway. I'm proud to say that despite all the issues that we had with COVID last year, specifically in our air freight operations, we still managed to ship roughly 2,000 air freight shipments during the course of last year, and over 5,000 TUs in sea freight. So that's quite an accomplishment for the organization. Being able to, in these difficult times, to still fulfill our mission and make sure that the goods end up where they need to be. We don't do that alone, of course. We have 8 contracted freight forwarders, which seems like a high number, and it is. But at the same time, looking at our quite spread out global footprint with a number of different origin countries and over 130 destination countries, and also knowing that about 1/3 of our shipments require destination services, we feel that we really need a flexible base of freight forwarders, and we need some local expert and some humanitarian logistics companies to be able to help us to get the goods to where they need to be. Last year, and this is something that we didn't really have visibility on before, but thanks to Wakeo, we utilized 120 different carriers for air and sea. I think for Wakeo that was a challenge in and of itself, because we, looking at the destination countries that we have specifically for air freight, we don't always use the big names, but we also get some more exotic airlines, if you will. But we managed in the end to get them all uploaded into it's all shipments that are in our Wakeo platform now, and we're reporting on each and every one of them. Yes. So the need for supply chain visibility, I think it's a no-brainer. There is a need for supply chain visibility in any organization. Specifically, what we saw within IDA initially is that we had employees that were involved in shipping goods and spending a disproportionate amount of time on chasing freight forwarders on statuses of shipments, which takes time away from them and time away from the freight forwarder. So the supply chain visibility, we felt, would allow them to better use their time, and would also take time away, would also make the freight forwarder more efficient. So apart from that, a big advantage of added supply chain visibility is the customer experience. I think we all have customers now that are used to an online experience in their private life, and they take that with them in their professional life as well. So we need to be able to provide them with an instant common look and feel, an intuitive tool to be able to tell them the location of their shipment. And then the last of the main points, managing by exception. Each person within IDA that is operationally involved in shipments, they don't have only one shipment, of course, that they manage, but they have a number of shipments at any given time. And it would be a waste of time to really keep track of each and every shipment constantly if that takes too much time away from them. And having a better visibility in the supply chain allows them to really focus on shipments that require specific attention. So only shipments that are delayed or that have a problem for another reason. And having a track and trace tool like Wakeo really helps us in that regard to be able to focus our employees better on those shipments. And how did we then end up at Wakeo? Because we did look at a number of different companies in the search for a single platform. That was basically the goal, to see all of our shipments. So the initial goal, because we have 8 freight forwarders, as I mentioned, and they each have a different level of digital maturity. Some, they offer their own track and trace capabilities, some don't. And what we were looking for is to avoid our internal and external stakeholders to have to go to a different platform of a different freight forwarder for each and every shipment, but to be able to go to a single IDA branded platform to see each and every shipment that they might have, regardless of which freight forwarder is involved in that actual transport. So that was the first goal which Wakeo could deliver. And then what they also really helped us with, as it says, the different maturity of freight forwarders. It helps a lot if you can see the different freight forwarders at the same quality level, meaning even freight forwarders that do not have a track and trace capabilities themselves, or at least not the visual aids, the visualization of it as we know it. Moving them on a single platform allows us to see each and every one in the same way. Implementation, of course, was very important. Yeah, it says easy implementation. I don't think any implementation is as easy as you expect it to be. There's always some issues that arise. But at least what we found in Wakeo was a very flexible way of connecting to each and every freight forwarder. So it's not a one size fits all, but it's various sizes fit various freight forwarders. So they were able to adapt to different types of data connections to make sure that all of our different freight forwarders were able to send their data on shipments to Wakeo. And then lastly, I think one of the advantages, because we knew that Wakeo was a startup. I don't know if we can still call it a startup, but at the time it was a startup. So very much in development. And that was an interest to us. So we were interested to know their roadmap. And one of the most interesting things for us on that roadmap was the emissions tracking. And I'm happy to see that it's now almost completely implemented for IDA. So because for us, it's we will get back to that later, but for us, that was a very strategic goal to have more visibility on on the emissions of our transports. So we were happy that Wakeo gave it the same importance.
Thank you, Bart, for for telling us why you chose our solution. I'll get a bit more in detail on what we do and how we do it at Wakeo. But first, as you mentioned the implementation, I will start with telling you how we implemented Wakeo for IDA Foundation. So first, what we needed to do was to collect the transport orders in order to track shipments for IDA. What I mean by transport order data, it's very simple data like a container number and a shipping line in the sea freight, or an airway bill in the air freight. And so we had to collect those data and to do it with the 8 freight forwarders that IDA has and connect directly to their system. And after that, as we are now used to, we know that the quality of the data in a TMS is not always good or not very consistent. So we had to work closely with all 8 freight forwarders in order to have consistent data as input. And for that, we managed to increase the data quality from 40% to 90% quite easily. And then, of course, the goal was to track 100% of shipments for IDA, which we did, and during this implementation phase. And then, for sure, IDA's users do not want to track a container number or an airway bill. It does not really mean something. What you want to track is your goods. So you want to have your own internal references, and you want to know what are the goods in the shipments. So what we did was also to collect those data in order to contextualize the information for IDA Foundation in Wakeo, so that when a user connects to Wakeo and he sees a shipment, then he knows what are the goods. And then once we have this information as well, we can push back the data directly to the IDS system, so that then even in IDA's own system, then you know when the ships, the goods are coming, and you have it directly in your system. So that's for the implementation phase, let's say. Now let's see how it works and how we are able at Wakeo to track shipments. So basically, what we rely on multiple sources of data. First, we are directly connected to the shipping line and airlines in order to know what events happen to the goods, but also in order to know if something changed compared to the booking. For example, if a vessel has changed, or if we've added a new transshipment. So those are the first type of data that we use, and then we also are connected to the port and airport systems in order to really get the container moves on the ground, for example, in and out of the port. And so those are data from existing system, but we also enrich it with external and independent data, which are the satellite data. So for that, we use the vessel and the IAS for the vessels and the ADSB for the planes in order to receive in real time the geolocation of the vessels and the planes. And that allows us also to know when we have a deviation that occurs. So for example, when during the Suez Canal crisis, we could detect when a shipment was rerouted towards the Cape of Good Hope instead of going and waiting in line in the Canal of Suez. And then we were able to detect that we had a deviation, and which would imply a delay for sure. And after connecting to all those type of data, what we have is our own in-house algorithm with data science that helps us to predict the most accurate estimated time of arrival for our customers. And so this is for the real-time tracking, but then we not only do the real-time tracking, we will also accumulate data and historical data and offer analytics based on this historical data. As we are not a transport provider, we offer analytics that is 100% neutral, and we can act like a third party and a trusted third party for our customers. So on the analytics, what we propose is to objectify the service level of transport providers, because we can identify recurring delays or the evolution of the transit time. And knowing that the transit time is increasing, for example, when you know that for a specific service, you always have 10 more days than expected, then you can include this in your transport management and in your sourcing in order to avoid to have a shortage at the end. So this can be really used and including in the process. And also what we offer is to have some visibility on something that's kind of a black box for shippers, which is the detention and demurrage costs. So what we try to propose is to show the D&D cost, having the information of the time a container spent at the port and was returned empty, and having as insight also the negotiated free time and extra cost of our shippers. Then we can show where the costs are in which port, and then they can renegotiate it with the different ports or shipping lines. And finally, we also now propose a new module of carbon footprint. But I think we will see that at the end of the presentation, so we'll not go too deeper in this part.
Well, thank you, Charles and Bart, for giving that good overview of Wakeo and of IDA Foundation. I think it's interesting for anyone watching to have a better sense, Bart, from the perspective, obviously IDA has quite a complex supply chain, perhaps more than most people here might have in their own respective jobs. And Charles, it's then interesting for you to really explain exactly how Wakeo is able to provide that level of real-time visibility and the other advanced analytics that clients have access to. Now, both of you have touched on a few of the disruptions that most shippers or freight forwarders will have experienced over the last 12 to 18 months. Obviously, there has been the pandemic, which has impacted, I mean, effectively every aspect of normal life. The global supply chain has been no exception to that, and also a number of port blockages and sort of unique events like the Suez Canal blockage. If you could just each, maybe you've touched on them, but speak in a little bit more detail, maybe starting with you, Bart, because it would be interesting to know the pandemic will have disrupted your supply chain, but also maybe increased the demand for some of the medical supplies and materials that you're trying to provide around the world. If you could explain a little bit about that, or how the Suez Canal blockage, for example, has impacted it, and how Wakeo has helped you to navigate those difficult areas.
Yeah, overall, as I mentioned, the COVID pandemic, it started with a lot of operational issues. But for us, it was also a chance to provide our services to some of our clients. So we added a number of items to our catalog that we did not supply before, some PPE items initially. And we're currently actively involved in looking how we can play a bigger part in the worldwide vaccination schemes. So it's really something, yeah, we if there's a need, we try to be involved where we can be of added value, of course. In terms of actual examples of what went well and less well, we all, of course, probably have examples of shipments being stuck here and there. Suez Canal is a prime example. I think if that would have happened prior to the implementation of Wakeo, it would for us have been, because we learned about it quite quickly through our different contacts and through social media and such. And I think in the days before Wakeo, it would have meant contacting each and every freight forwarder and asking them, are there any shipments en route that you have for IDA, and are they affected, yes or no? And they would have to go to the carrier, and it would take quite some time to get the full picture of what we would be looking at. And utilizing Wakeo now, we had an instant view of shipments en route. So for instance, we could see that a number of inbound shipments from India to the Netherlands that we urgently needed had passed the Suez Canal, so we're not at risk anymore. At the same time, sadly enough, we also saw that one shipment for one of our clients was stuck behind that evergreen vessel. But at least it allowed us, I mean, it's not good news to tell your client, of course, but at least it allowed us to be proactive and to be ahead of the news. So we don't want to be in a situation where a client keeps asking us what is happening to my shipment. We want to be proactive enough to tell them, okay, I don't know if you've seen the news, but this happened, and I'm sorry to say your shipment is affected. We're currently looking at a delay of whatever it is. So it really, I think it helps a lot, and it's a big added value to have that in your supply chain.
Yeah, I think you mentioned a key word there in proactivity, which I think is one of the things that Wakeo is really trying to offer clients, is that, yes, it's not going to be a solution in and of itself to disruption that you might face, but it does put you in a position to deal with it in the best way possible as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
Charles, then, obviously Bart there has touched on issues that I think almost every Wakeo client will have experienced during that same period. How have you seen the last 12 to 18 months, maybe the sort of types of use cases? Has anything changed in terms of the way or the amount that customers are using Wakeo, the Wakeo platform?
Yeah, for sure. We've seen that currently the market is very disrupted right now, as you mentioned a few points, and there is really been a need for Wakeo due to that. With the pandemic effect, we've seen the prices of containers skyrocketing. So now for a 40-foot container from Shanghai to Rotterdam, it costs $10,000, which is 5 times more than last year at the same time. So having that in mind, you would expect some quality of service, but it's not the case, as there is a lot of disruptions. But when you pay that amount of money, you also want to know where are your goods and when they will arrive. And we've seen that since the beginning of the year, we have 50% of the vessels that are delayed. And last year it was 25% to 30%. So you need to know which of your goods are delayed. And we have also some spot events that really disrupt the market, with the Suez Canal, which impacted 400 vessels. And also we've seen many congestions on ports. After the Suez Canal, we had European ports that were congested because we had all the vessels going to Europe. Then we've seen that in the US, especially in the West Coast, Los Angeles and Long Beach have been congested for quite some time now. And lately we've had Yantian near Shenzhen in China that had a huge congestion that impacted for at least 15 days of delay each vessel that was going in or out of Yantian. So for sure, this has impacted the use of Wakeo for our current customers and the need for Wakeo for other shippers. That's for sure, yeah.
That's very interesting, and I think it's always helpful during these webinars to get a more sort of contextualized look at actually how, because there's sometimes things can remain quite abstract. It's obviously not good news for people to know that they're going to be delays, but it's interesting to see that the kind of real use cases of them. Before we move on to the next slide, I guess I'll just do some more of my admin duties and just remind people that they can, in case you weren't here at the beginning, you can use the chat on the right-hand side just to ask any questions that you might have, and we'll be addressing them at the end in a Q&A. So far, we've had a couple trickle in through DMs, but if you have anything you want to know, just throw it there and we'll address it at the end.
Yeah, moving on. Still on managing by exception. So we touched upon a couple of very disruptive instances, which makes managing by exception, I think, more important. But at the same time, delays are almost standard now. So that's a little bit of a conundrum. I think one example that springs to mind that we had in the early days of COVID, in the early days of worldwide COVID, I would say, in May, June last year, was that we had a shipment to a destination in Africa with a transit hub on the way, an air freight shipment from Amsterdam. And at the time, the carriers, they were really depending also on local country restrictions. They would basically cancel their flights at the last moment if they needed to. There was no predicting what would happen, and that happened. So our shipment was en route, and the onward flight from Istanbul was cancelled. So when it arrived in Istanbul, it went straight back to Amsterdam. And we were able, because of the automatic alerts set up on that shipment, we were able to see that instant happening really as it happened, even before the freight forwarder was aware. And that it allowed us to take immediate action and to challenge the freight forwarder on, do you have any other solutions for this flight, or at least is it necessary to pick it up from the airport if you can't find an immediate alternative flight? And that helped a lot, and in the end, we managed to find a flight quite quickly. So we did manage to get the goods to where they were needed. And I think if we didn't have that possibility, because the airlines in those days, they could be quite quick in their actions, but not in their communication. So it would have taken, in a normal situation, quite a while before we were aware that that shipment was actually back in Amsterdam. So that's key, really being able to focus on those shipments that require the additional attention. To take proactive actions, to be able to either solve the issue, or at least at the very minimum inform the client of what we're doing and what is happening to the shipment, and to also be able to really show the actual shipment information to the client. So we're not just selling words, but we're able to provide screenshots or other information to show them this is what is now happening to the shipment that you put in our care, and we're doing everything we can to solve the issues.
Yeah, and also in order to really ensure that your user are focusing on the right shipment, what we did together with IDEA was really to assign the correct shipments to each user. So, for example, if you're part of a business unit and you want only to see those shipments, or if you are involved in a specific geography, departure, arrival, any kind of combination, we really try to spot the correct shipments for each and every user at IDEA, and then each and every one of them are able to put the right alerting that they want. If they want to be advised when there is at least 1 day of delay, then they can be alerted by that. If it's needed only after 2 or 3, then they can do the same. That way, we are sure that as soon as we send an alert and we advise someone, it's the right time to advise him, and he needs to make an action afterwards. So that's really what we try to do with IDEA and all our customers, in order to really ensure to work on added value and not waste time on looking at each and every shipment.
Yeah, another point that we managed to improve by using Wakeo was our freight forwarder management. That is not to say that we didn't manage freight forwarders prior to Wakeo, of course, but having their information in one single platform and being able to share that information with each freight forwarder, so they have access to their own shipments, or the shipments that they perform for IDA in Wakeo, it really helps a lot. So previously, when we had business review meetings, we quite often had discussions on the measurement of KPIs. We would present them with numbers, and they had done their own calculations, and we would then have discrepancies. And now, basically, they can look every day in a shared platform. They can see their data quality, also the quality on a number of KPIs, so transit time, performance, and those kind of things. And because they can see it on a daily basis, you preempt those discussions once you have a business review meeting. And we can actually talk about their performance, which is, of course, why you get together at those times. What also helps is the fact that we now have the same look and feel for each freight forwarder, and not only in the track and trace, but also in their performance measurement. We have 8 different freight forwarders. Some are quite large, with big departments that find client solutions, and they have beautiful graphs with all kinds of KPIs, and some don't have the same possibilities. And the same as you shouldn't judge a book by its cover. You should judge a freight forwarder really on the performance only, and not by how beautiful their graphs look. So being able to use their data and pair it with objective arrival information from airlines and carriers really allows us to basically qualify each of them in exactly the same way. So that helps us. That helps us a lot there. Yeah, and one of the advantages that we were looking for as part of the implementation of a tool like Wakeo was process efficiencies. So we have a number of examples here. Of course, the workload efficiency gain is something that we touched upon already by being able to focus your attention only on shipments that require that attention. You are more efficient in following up shipments. So it's not basically those people can then focus their time on more important tasks, because chasing a freight forwarder is not the most exciting job in the world. Being able to really focus your attention on finding solutions for clients is, of course, much more valuable. Also, we have the habit of invoicing our shipments at the moment that an Incoterm is fulfilled. And that used to be quite a manual process. So we would wait for the freight forwarder to confirm an arrival of a shipment, even for the C Incoterm shipments. And then we would rely on one of our own employees to update that in the system, and then the invoice would be automatically issued. By using Wakeo, most of those status updates are now automatic, meaning we invoice a lot quicker, which has a very positive effect on our working capital, and that is important, I would say, for any organization, even for a not-for-profit. So we're very happy to see that have such a positive effect. And then lastly, and I'm kind of stealing Charles's thunder here a little bit, but one of the things that was already on the roadmap, I think, when we started working with Wakeo, or quite soon after, was the booking feature. So to be launched quite soon. I won't reveal the official launching date, Charles. You can do that. But we see, and I think it's the same in a lot of organizations, quite a lot of the current way we do bookings is through emails, and that can lead up to a lot of communication and misunderstandings and difficulties. So being able to do that in the same tool as that we have our track and trace will allow first a more seamless experience for the person booking the shipment, because the booked shipment will then automatically turn into a shipment that can be tracked. But it will also really streamline the communication that we have with our freight forwarders and avoid potential issues. So we see it as a major advantage coming up.
Yeah, thank you for the introduction of our next feature. For sure, as you mentioned, discussing with different of our clients, we realized that the booking process with the freight forwarder was in many cases very manual and done through email exchanges. So we realized that we could really help our current customers to work more on added value task, instead of having those email exchanges that takes quite some time. So we've decided to launch a new product which will allow each shipper to book directly towards the freight forwarder. This will be launched by the end of the summer, and we are really excited about this new product. And basically, this will help all shippers to consolidate all the bookings that they have to all their freight forwarder in one single platform, instead of having either to use the freight forwarder platform or to send emails. And we believe that this will also help to standardize the processes, because then you don't have a different process with each forwarder, and you have standard fields that you need to complete in order to ensure that your booking will be complete and will be confirmed by your freight forwarder. And also, this can automate the process because we are then directly connected to the freight forwarder system. So this is directly pushed into a TMS where the operators are already working. So even for the freight forwarders, this reduces a lot the workload and automates the process instead of having to copy and paste a lot of fields in a TMS. And finally, then we also have more transparency on booking status. And then when you're a shipper, you have visibility of all your shipments, even before they are really shipments and they are still at the booking process. And then you know what will be your next shipment and what will arrive to the warehouses. So we really just took one step back. We did the tracking, and then what we want to do is to go just a bit before in the processes with the booking. And we are excited to also launch this and work together with IDA in order to really ensure that this new product is really working for the shipper and for the freight forwarder, because it's not only on one side for the shipper, it's on all sides. We want really each and every party to be satisfied with this and to have less workload thanks to that.
Yes. So we mentioned, I think a couple of times already, the customer experience is of course very important. We deal with clients that have in their private life, they have the Amazon experience, for lack of a better term, where they order something and they know exactly when it will be delivered. And you cannot sell to a client anymore that basically when they order something, they have to constantly chase a company to ask when is my shipment going to be delivered. So we are very happy to see that with Wakeo, our first stage of implementation was mostly internal. We at the time were already able to provide client access through user accounts. So for clients that have a large number of shipments, that did make sense. But now, since about 3 months, if I'm not mistaken, we are able to also share the link for an individual shipment with a client. So as part of a pre-alert, we can send all the information to a client on their shipment that is about to be dispatched. And then once the shipment is uploaded in Wakeo by the freight forwarder, they can basically have a complete view and follow their shipment step by step. Get predictive, basically the same information as what the people at IDA would see, which is also a big plus because, well, first it increases transparency, but it also means that when a client has a question, we're basically looking at exactly the same data, which I think is very useful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really what we want to help our customers, is to improve their own customers' experience. So that's why we've released this feature in order to help to share any shipment to any customer, and also to have your own Wakeo platform branded as your image with the white labeling, so that IDA has Wakeo as its own image, and when a user from IDA shares a shipment to his own clients, then it's like he's sharing from his own system, which also helps on the customer experience. And also, so this can be done for spot shipment when you want to share one, but for sure, when you have regular flows with some specific customers, then you can also simply add them in the platform and have them have their own user account, so that they, as soon as they have a new shipment, then they simply see it by logging to Wakeo. So yeah, that's 2 ways just to share and bring visibility to the end customer.
Yeah, thank you, Charles. So advanced analytics. So one of the added values of having all the freight forwarders send their data to Wakeo is that we now have all our transport data in a uniform way combined in one platform. And that brings forth quite a lot of different opportunities. So we have a lot of data currently that brings more information and often also more questions, of course, because that's how it works. But that's something that I am personally very excited about, because I'm a supply chain professional but a data geek at heart. So I'm very excited about the opportunities that analytics brings to us and to provide added value within the organization to use the shipment data that we have. So we're using both the standard Wakeo dashboards. They also provided some custom-made dashboards for us. But on top of that, we also pull data from Wakeo and push it into our own BI tool to really get to a supply chain, an overall supply chain dashboard, and get a good view for our internal stakeholders to be able to provide them with better information. And of course, so one of the things that we do, of course, is look at the transit time. So if we get a promise or a question of how long does it take from A to B, we can now look within our own shipment on how many shipments have we done in the last couple of months and what were the average transit times that we managed to have. And I'm happy to say that, and again, I'm stealing Charles' thunder, sorry. I'm happy to say that soon we will also be able to dig into anonymized data from other clients as well, because basically the more data you have, the more accurate your prediction will be. So that's also something that we look forward to.
Yeah, that's exactly it. What we wanted to start with as a first step was simply to provide the trends based on the customers' data. But now we want to move a step further with all the historical data that we have and the amount of data. Then you can compare yourself to the market, and we also want to move even further, having all shipping line, airline services, and comparing all those services on different criteria. For example, on the transit time, but also on the reliability, because if a shipping line has a very low transit time but is always delayed, then you know that you won't have a good service. So that's a criteria to have in mind. And we want also to have a last criteria to compare each route or services is based on the carbon footprint. And the carbon footprint is now something that we also propose as in the analytics module in order to have now visibility on emissions and greenhouse gases, because we know that in the freight the freight transport and logistics accounts for 10% of the greenhouse gas emissions. So for us, it was completely the right time to provide data to our clients who are shippers and freight forwarders in order to help them account for what they are emitting. And we know that it's very complex when you're a shipper to account for your emissions, because you have different freight forwarders with different level of maturity. You also have are using an amount of carriers that also have different level of maturity. And even if they are able to calculate emissions, then you don't know if you can compare the emission from one freight forwarder with another one, because if they do not use the same methodology, then it does not mean anything. So what we thought was it would be very good to have for all our shippers the same methodology and the same way of calculating it, So that's what we do, and we do it on all multimodal shipments. So no matter if you use sea freight, air freight, or road freight, then you can use our calculation. And what we really wanted was to have a calculation that our customer could trust. So that's why we respect the European norms and also the GLEC framework. That way, when you use it, you know that it respects a norm. So it's the way now shippers are supposed to calculate emissions. So you can trust it, and that's and it will be the same for all shipments.
Yeah. And for us, I mentioned in the beginning that sustainable supply chain, I think that the fact that emission calculation was on the roadmap for Wakeo was one of the decision makers for us. And that's because for us at IDA, sustainable supply chain is very important. Our strategic goals are aligned with the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and one of our strategic goals is to develop a sustainable value chain. So that goes beyond only emissions, but it's and carbon footprints, but it also deals with human rights, for instance, and equality. But within the supply chain, we focus on trying to obtain a sustainable supply chain and get a better understanding, basically, of what our emission, what our carbon footprint is. Because in order to solve the problem or find solutions for a problem, we first need to know what the problem is. So we're looking actively at what is the carbon footprint of our warehouses, for instance, but also what is the carbon footprint of each and every one of our transports. So by implementing this solution, we now have a common platform and we can report that information. And we can make it a decision maker. We can provide solutions to clients. It will be more important to some than for others. I think we have to maybe guide some of them in that process a little bit. And we can offer them solutions in terms of making it part of a decision when deciding on a transport plan. Showing them, okay, so this is a slightly more expensive option, but at least it's a far more greener option than the alternative. We're also now actively in contact with a number of organizations that are involved in the offsetting of emissions. Organizations closely linked to ours that have that plant forests in also in Africa and Latin America. So that's also something that we could possibly develop in the future. But at least it starts with knowing what is the impact that we have, and then finding ways to find a solution.
Well, perfect. And I don't think I needed any advanced real-time tracking to know that there was a good chance that a online webinar might run slightly long. So we do have time, I guess, for just a couple of quick questions that we've had from the audience. The first one is for Charles, which is, does Wakeo use IoT devices in shipments?
Okay, that's a good question. Basically, at Wakeo, we do not provide IoT. We are a software platform, not a hardware platform. But in cases that our customer use any IoT devices, either to have the temperature, the pressure, or any statistic that they want, then we can connect to that in order to show all those statistics in real time. That's something, for example, that we are already doing with one of our customers, Air Liquide, where they need to know at each and every time the pressure of the tanks. So this is a new contextualized data that we show in the platform, so that when they receive a container, a tank container, they know what is the pressure, and they know if they need to release some pressure in order to avoid any issue with their goods.
And Bart, I've got one for you as well, which is, you mentioned saving time by aligning the KPIs and data that you use across all of your freight forwarders. Was it difficult to get them to accept a third-party source for performance indicators?
Surprisingly, no, not really. I think when you, I mean, the numbers are there and the calculation is quite transparent. So no, we didn't. Honestly, we didn't really have any issues on that in that regard.
That's probably a good answer to hear. And the final question that we have, which is for Bart, is for Charles, which is there a mobile app available for Wakeo?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for now, no, we do not have any mobile app. But for sure, what we want to have is that our web platform needs to be responsive on all devices. So that's what we are working on, because we want to make it available even on the phone for an operator that's working in a warehouse, for example, and that does not have his computer beside next to him. So for sure, that's something that is in our roadmap and that we want to offer to our customers. Yes.
Well, I suppose that's all of the questions that we've been asked. So that just about wraps things up. So I'll thank you, Charles, and thank you, Bart, for taking the time to provide those insights and to tell us a little bit more about Wakeo and IDA Foundation, respectively.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, thank you, Bart.
And so if you're interested in finding out more about either Wakeo or IDA Foundation, you can contact us via our website or email us at hello@wakeo.co, and we'll be able to put you in touch with the most relevant person for your inquiry. But yes, thank you for everyone for attending, and hopefully we'll see you all soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.